There's only one agenda item, that is revisions to the salary schedule to be compliant with Act 311 of 2024. We've all mentioned this a little bit. It's a requirement to be compliant with the law that was just signed by the governor. That's revisions to salary schedules per Act 311 of 2024, effective July 1st, 2024. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
That one, Mr. Natale, second. Mrs. Washington. Does anybody have any questions about this item? Good, excellent. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Okay, that was the only item on that meeting. So we have, what? We need a motion to adjourn that meeting. Mr. Hardesty, second. Mr. Washington, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. Do this again. Now we're opening up the second meeting of the day. Do we need to call roll again? Okay, we have roll call again. Mr. Bourne.
Ms. Ayo.
Present.
Mr. Baumgarten.
Here.
Mr. Brook. Mr. Castillo. Here. Ms. Fontenot.
Here.
Ms. Gay.
Here.
Mr. Hardesty.
Here.
Ms. McReynolds.
Here.
Mr. Natale.
Here.
Mr. O'Banion.
Here.
Mr. Pichon.
Here.
Mr. Roberts.
Here.
Mr. Tarver.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Dr. Washington.
Present.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
All right, so on this meeting, the first agenda item is consideration of any changes that you want to make to the selection process. And the reason we have that item on there is because I had a few suggestions throughout the time period. As we were waiting to have this meeting, we had some suggestions. What I'm going to do right now, just so everybody's on the same page, is I'm going to take about maybe 60 seconds and refresh everybody on what we are about to execute if we don't change anything, so that everybody is on the same page and understands the way the next couple weeks are going to go. First thing is tonight we're going to be selecting primarily from resumes only. We're going to be selecting 4 finalists from the 8 applicants. That will be done on a vote tonight, a vote for 4 vote, where you will go in alphabetical order as board members, and you will each give 4 names that Mr. Bourne's going to tabulate, and then the top 4 vote getters will advance and become finalists to be interviewed in future meetings. Those meetings are going to be on July the 8th and July the 9th. Each interview will be 55 minutes long in open session, and we will give the candidates times 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock to start those meetings. That will be 2 candidates on July the 8th, 2 candidates on July the 9th, and then on also on July the 9th. So also on July the 9th, we would vote for the superintendent, and that would be vote for a selection, and then if someone gets 8 votes, that candidate is the superintendent. If they don't get 8 votes, we'll eliminate 1 at a time. Go from there. That's the current plan. It will be done by July the 9th, and then on July the 11th, there will be a meeting to discuss details with the contract of the superintendent, which is primarily pay, term, things of that nature.
I have a question.
Okay, so I guess what we'll do first is we'll say, does anybody have any questions about what the plan is? So go ahead, and I'll do my best to answer those questions.
I'm a little confused on the plan. On the 8th of July, we will be interviewing 4.
2. Interviewing 2 on the 8th, interviewing 2 on the 9th.
So you're
And then-
saying that, and when will we be voting? So
On the
whoever
9th.
comes out on top on the 8th,
So no voting on the 8th,
okay,
interviewing 2 on the 8th, interviewing 2 on the 9th. And then after the second interview on the 9th, it will be votes. That's the plan.
okay, so we'll go into executive session. In the event that we as a board have questions that we don't want to ask on the
So
board.
currently, while we're just talking about what the current plan is, currently there's no executive session in the plan. There has been some discussion to add, which we'll get, but first let's just say questions about the current plan. Are you good on that?
I'm not good with it, but I accept.
Any more questions though, and then we'll make changes. Any more
Because you
questions?
said we're going further about being able to discuss it before we vote, come back out
Right.
and vote.
So
Okay.
what I want to do is answer any questions about the plan as it is, and then we'll take any changes after that. Any more questions about the plan? Go ahead.
Tonight, we vote for 4.
Right, okay, so the question there is vote for 4 or vote up to 4? That's the question. Mr. Balfour, you heard that? Vote for 4 or vote up to 4?
The plan was to vote on 4 finalists.
Right. So if there's no objections, we'll just clarify, everybody vote for 4. As opposed to vote for however many you want, just no objections to that?
Each person has 4 votes, each of us
Right.
has 4 votes.
That's right.
We use them as we choose.
That's correct. The question is about 1 vote or 2 votes or 3 votes or 4 votes. Everyone vote for 4. Got it?
The 50% comment by the motion by Mr. Castillo is also part of that.
Oh, that's right. Another thing we can clarify, if there are no objections, is are we interviewing 4? The plan is to interview 4 based on the 50%. But if anyone wants to change that, we can discuss changing it. Does anybody have any questions about the plan before we start asking for suggestions to change things? Okay, great. All right, now, so we can do these in a kind of orderly way. I have a few suggestions that I've had mentioned a bunch of times, and if we do them in order, it'll be a little more clear. The first thing that's gotten mentioned a bunch of times is, do we want to add more interviews and not interview only 4? So that will affect all the other ones because it would take a lot of time. So does anybody want to make a motion about changing how many we interview? Okay, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so 4.
I don't want to change that, but I just want to know, when are you going to notify? Does everybody already know that some of them might not be interviewed of
Yeah.
the 8? We've made that clear
So they
to
do
all of
know,
them.
they do know 8, they know 8 applicants, 4 finalists is their current understanding of the plan, right? They have been notified of that. So they have been notified, unless we change it, they're proceeding on 4 interviews.
But they're proceeding on the notion that you interview at least 50%
Of the-
applicants,
right.
and there are 8 applicants.
They're proceeding on, we're gonna interview at least 4,
I assume that.
right? Yeah.
You're assuming, are the applicants aware of, that doesn't, I'm just saying, if I applied for a job and I thought there was a possibility that I would be interviewed for that job, I need to know that you're only going to interview 50% of them, but you would at least extend the courtesy to let me know as soon as tonight's vote is over, that, I will not be interviewed.
Yeah, that will absolutely
That will
happen,
be
right?
done,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
That will certainly happen. Okay, so no change in the number of interviews. The number of interviews will be 4. There were no objections, there were no suggestions. There was a lot of suggestion about adding executive session to the interviews. Does anybody want to make a motion about adding executive sessions?
I move that we add an executive session after we have interviewed all 4 applicants, so that we can discuss if we have questions that we prefer not to ask on the floor.
Okay, let me mention one thing that's gonna make that difficult. They're not all gonna be here on the same day. So if you wanna add an executive session, you need to add it for each interview.
Well, not for each interview, but I think if they know
Or
on
each
the,
day.
on the 9th, any applicant that has applied would like to, they're gonna find out on the 9th who the victim is in this process, so they'll be here. If I were an applicant, I'd be here on the last night to see what the outcome was. But even if they're not here, the invitation can be extended to them.
Okay, so the current motion is to add an executive session to.
On the 9th,
To ask questions to the candidates on the 9th,
no,
right?
no. All of our questions are gonna be asked of them out here in the public forum, but we need to talk, we don't need to just decide, okay,
You wanna have an executive session with only us?
right,
Is anything wrong with that?
You can have an executive session to discuss character, professional competence, physical and mental health of a person. The person being discussed has to be listed, they have to be notified.
Okay.
They have the right to have that discussion in open session.
Okay, so, Ms. Gay, that's not gonna be, they're gonna have to be in there.
If you say, if I understood Mr. Belfour correctly, anything that we might ask of a personal nature, all we've done, Mr. Belfour, is read these resumes. Some of these people have more going for them than what we ask and what they put. But you know what? I'm satisfied. I have no more questions. We can proceed as we intended tonight.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
So if you're withdrawing that,
I'm withdrawing.
so now we're back on, does anybody wanna add executive sessions? Dr. Washington?
I would like to add executive session so that we can meet with the candidates one by one.
Okay, so that would be, each interview would have an executive session added to it.
Yes.
You have somebody wanna, so that's the motion. Second, Reverend Wallace. Does somebody wanna suggest, if there are no objections, an amount of time, so it's not infinity? Like, how, limit it to 20 minutes, limit it to 30 minutes, suggestion?
It should be
You don't
how
want
long
a
it
suggestion?
takes, I don't think it's
I
gonna.
You wanna
limit
limit
to
it
30
to
minutes.
30 minutes? Okay. So you go with that? You were the second?
Yeah.
Limited to no longer than 30 minutes? Executive
Mr.
session.
Barber, is that 30 minutes out of their interview time or 30 minutes in
That's-
addition?
That's what we're fixing to try to figure out. That's a very good question. Yeah, so the original plan was 55-minute interviews, and that was so that we could tell them, you could be here at 5, be here at 6. So if you wanna go to, it's her motion, let her talk, then we'll go to you.
I would like it in addition.
In addition, so we'll do 55 plus 30, and then we'll have to do, 5 o'clock interview and then a 6:30 interview for the next guy. Does that make sense? Okay, you with that?
So my question is, this is not something new, so what did we do, even though we're not mirroring what we did 2 years ago? But
I think that's-
we did an executive session for each candidate after we interviewed them. So what's different? I mean, we're acting like we don't know. We do know that we interviewed them for a certain amount of time, and then the last time, was that time taken out of, or did we add to for the executive session? Because we did executive session for each of the 9 candidates last time.
I think 55, I think an hour and a half is probably about what they were. They were probably close to an hour plus the executive session, huh?
I think in the past, sometimes the board has included the executive session in the total interview time, but it's up to the board to decide how they want to do it this time.
And your recommendation was that the candidate has to be present in the interview.
Candidate has to be.
In the executive, I know for this.
If you're going to ask the candidate
Yeah.
questions in the
As they were
closed
last.
session, the candidate has to be here.
Right.
Well, then I'm in agreement.
Yeah. Okay, does everybody understand that motion? That would be on the 8th and the 9th. Add a 30-minute, up to 30 minutes. If we're done faster, we'll stop quicker, but up to 30 minutes executive session to each interview on the 8th and the 9th. And everybody understand that's gonna add an hour to each meeting. Everybody good with that? Okay, all in favor say aye. Well, any more questions? Sorry, any more questions about that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Okay, so if y'all will document those changes. And I'm sure we will notify the applicants of those changes. Okay, does anybody have any interest in changing the schedule to add additional days or subtract? Everybody good with 2 3-hour meetings? You have anything
That's one question.
schedule-wise?
The 9th, would have been a board meeting. So where is that gonna be playing into, that would have been on a Tuesday, so that would have been the second Tuesday, so where's that playing?
Right, so kind of my prerogative, but we're gonna have nothing on that agenda that we don't absolutely have to have discussed at that time. So we'll clear that agenda. There will be a regularly scheduled board meeting, and it probably has some items that are just, we have to talk about them at this time. But we're not gonna have anything on that meeting that has any kind of significant, flexibility. I'm sure we'll have some things we have to have on there. Is there anything you know of that's gonna be lengthy? Okay.
Are there any action items, are there any items on that agenda that we need to take action to?
What we know about today,
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
I can tell you what we know about today. One, we normally adopt the salary schedules, we have to adopt our millages, we have to adopt the budget, and we have an executive session scheduled for, a settlement that has to be done.
Okay, right, so that's good to know. I'm gonna mention his suggestion and see if that's, so the suggestion was, can we make the regularly scheduled board meeting on the 11th? So we don't have a 3-hour superintendent meeting and an additional board meeting with it. Have a regularly scheduled board meeting on the 11th that would include the superintendent. You know, he'll be here on the 11th?
You can choose to reschedule the board meeting.
Well, okay, so if there's not complete agreement, then we're gonna have to just vote on what days people like. So, again, obviously the issue is we're gonna have 3 hours of interviews on the 8th and 3 hours of interviews on the 9th, plus we have a agenda for the 9th. Now. Did you have a question?
Well,
And then I'll go back to Russell. Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna just make it the next Tuesday, we'll have the new superintendent to run the meeting. So,
You know of anything that cannot wait a week?
Well, the other thing that we have on the agenda is to call the election with that tax renewals that we have on December the seventh. I'm not sure, I'll have to check them out. I'm not 100% certain that we can wait a little, I think we could wait 1 week, but I'm not 100% certain about that.
Did you have, you don't have a specific?
No.
Well, do you have, do you have a question about the schedule?
Like, how did we know this beforehand? Like, I mean, this has been scheduled for a month or two now, like, how did we know that we would have these things?
Well, we did,
It's
so we did know that,
like beforehand.
we did know that we had a meeting that day.
Yeah.
We just added an hour to it
Yeah.
5 minutes ago.
But we didn't, but the stuff on the agenda, the extra items, we didn't know about for the regular board meeting. But if we had those things, then we should have known prior to, so we could have made adjustments before sitting here in the meeting, trying to figure out where we're going and what we're doing.
I would like to see the Tuesday, July the 11th, July the 9th. The 9th cleared of anything that absolutely cannot wait. Clear it. And
The things that we're talking about, I need them done at that time,
they cannot wait.
but they shouldn't take very long.
Okay.
Well, I have a suggestion.
So as it stands, hang on, Ms. Gay. As it stands, we're gonna have a few mandatory items on the regularly scheduled meeting, plus 3 hours of interviews, plus a superintendent vote that will have blue cards with it, and it will be lengthy. It's gonna be a marathon. I'm not opposed to a marathon if that's what everybody wants to do, but
Well, if you like, I mean, the other thing that I have to have before that have to be at, is the public hearing on the budget, mandatory. And usually that's about 30 minutes before the board meeting. If we want, we can move the board meeting up to say 4:30, and I can schedule my hearing a little bit sooner. And that way it's coming first, we get knocked out of the way, and we start with the 9, just like we wouldn't have a meeting up.
so does anybody have any specific suggestions on what to do with the calendar now that we've added?
Just want to give you all some options.
Right, we basically added an hour to that night. And we're, if nobody changes it, we're about to just tank it and have a really, really, really long meeting that night.
Well, I have a suggestion.
Go ahead.
If it flies.
Go ahead, Ms.
Since
Gay.
we have our meetings on a Tuesday, what about Tuesday, move the board meeting to July the 2nd? And then we can just follow through with what we had planned for the superintendent. Since we're gonna be.
So you wanna move the regularly scheduled board
Regular
meeting up
meeting.
to the 2nd?
Right. As long, and that's a Tuesday.
It's 4th of July weekend. I don't care. Go ahead, Damon.
can we move the meeting up an hour
Yeah, we can definitely do that with 8 votes.
and make it at 4 o'clock?
That July the 9th meeting.
Yes.
Well, Hank, 1 second, Greg and I was just talking, we've already advertised the budget here to be 4:30, so, it's already posted in the newspaper to be 4:30, so. But again, the board meeting should not last very long,
Yeah, right.
maybe 15 or 20 minutes.
So the budget hearing is at 4:30.
Scheduled for 4:30, yes.
We could have the board meeting at 4 and have the budget.
No,
Can't do
The
that?
budget has to be adopted after the hearing.
This is gonna be a nightmare meeting. That's a good question. Go ahead. Can we re-advertise it for a different date?
Mr. Tarver, might I suggest, since the board appeared to be willing to meet early, why not just schedule the meeting for 4:30, leave the budget hearing like it is, adopt the budget, and then go into your meeting on selecting the superintendent?
Yeah, I think the question is, is 30 minutes enough to make a difference?
Hearing is outside the board meeting.
But you can have the board meeting scheduled for
Yeah.
Mr. Bourne suggested that what he'll do is he'll have his budget hearing at 4:30, and immediately following the end of that hearing, your board meeting will start. So
Yeah.
you'll schedule your board meeting for whatever time, you just won't call it to order until he's finished with his budget hearing.
So if
The
it's
thing
4,
was very short.
but if at 4:30 we have the budget hearing, and at 4:31 no one shows up, can we end the budget hearing?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm proposing.
So that's probably what we'll wind up doing. Does anybody have any problems with starting that meeting essentially at 4:30 with the beginning of it being that budget hearing? Any objections to that? So the July the 9th marathon meeting will basically start at 4:30. And the first, however long it takes, will be
We
the
haven't
budget
posted
hearing.
our agenda yet, so we still have the ability to do that. It's just the advertisement for the budget hearing is for 4:30.
Right, so I'm telling you, I'm the chair, I'm telling you, clear everything that is not absolutely mandatory, that you cannot wait. Everything else, clear it off that agenda. Okay, so now we're still on the schedule. Does anybody have any more suggestions about changing any schedule, changing any dates, anything like that? Okay, I also heard some suggestions about the order in which we vote, not always being alphabetical going down the line. Would anybody like to change the manner in which we vote? Not permanently, just for the superintendent plan. Okay, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so that's it. Now, does anybody have any other things they'd like to change that I have not suggested and are maybe good enough to get 8 votes? Anybody else have anything else they'd like to change? So speak now or forever hold your peace. I will answer any questions about what we are going to do, but after now, we're not going to be changing anything. It's going to be this is what we're doing. Anybody have any more questions? Okay. So no more motions on the table, no more seconds, nothing left to dispose of. So we're going to move on from A and move on to B. Any objections to moving on? Speak now or forever hold your peace again. Okay. Agenda item number B is, letter B is receive and discuss applications on candidates for superintendent. You guys have all received them via email, but just in case, there's a big stack on your desk. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna take a couple blue cards, and then we're gonna have board discussion about selecting the 4 to interview, but we'll do the blue cards first. Up first is Dr. Robbie Smith. Oh, there we go.
Good evening, thank you for your time. I had an opportunity to read the resumes also. And one particular stood out to me that you guys are very familiar with is Dr. Lawrence, who was here, your final 3, 2 years ago, and he's back on the radar, which tells me that he's interested in becoming a part of our community. As you all, as an HR person, I looked at all the resume and I saw the experience of Dr. Lawrence, and you guys are very familiar with him, like I said before, that he will be a great superintendent, I believe, for Cottage Parish. When you guys solicited the votes of your constituents, you had your children, the children of Cottage Parish in mind, and you wanted to do your very best, your very best for them. And I believe Dr. Lawrence will be your very best. I stand by, as I looked at all of the other resumes, and here's a guy I believe that can come in day one without being trained on the job and make a difference in Cottage Parish. You always said raise your expectation. Well, expectations have been raised if you select Dr. Lawrence, stand for your Cottage Parish School superintendent. I think he's the right person for the job at the right time. Like I said, he could have, in my opinion, been upset about not being selected, but he threw his name back in the hat again because he saw something here in Cottage Parish, just like you have, and the majority of us. That's why he wants to be here. And I implore you, ask for you, when you think about the next superintendent for the long haul, we won't be back here 2 years from now doing the same thing. But a guy that wants to have longevity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Eric Fry.
How y'all doing? Eric Fry. Okay, I want to make a comment. They say I can't ask a question, so I'll make the comments. Asking the board to pursue, I guess, more transparent opportunities to let the public know who applies for the superintendent positions and keep the public abreast of the process. Knowing gives me and the community a chance to, I guess, pre-research. So be transparent with the process, but don't rush. Okay, the second thing is, when selecting a person for the superintendent position, consider the qualification and experience. Experience matters. An experienced superintendent would have gotten it right when it came to inclement weather decisions. Now, this is where I've done my homework after the fact. Last time, I'm saying we're a team, right? So we saw a candidate, we let a candidate pass us by that had excellent school system superintendent qualification. He was EDSL eligible to be a superintendent and had superintendent experience. I'm asking you to do the right thing when making a selection for the position. Consider the qualification and experience. It makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. I got one more, but it's on the supplemental pay bill, which we voted on that already. It's gone. I'm sorry. It's done. Too late. Hopefully you agreed with what we did, Mr. Baines. Sorry. No, sorry. All right. So now you guys have the applications. What I'm gonna do now is we're gonna just open up for any discussion board members would like to have about the applications, about the selection, comments, questions or comments. Really, this is comments. Nobody has any comments? Everybody ready to vote? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so if you're ready, Mr. Bourne, we can go ahead and do the. Everybody votes for 4. Do us alphabetically. We're selecting 4 to interview on the 8th and 9th. 4, yep. So Mr. Bourne's gonna call you out, give Mr. Bourne 4 names. Does everybody know the 8 candidates? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bourne.
Ready to proceed? Okay. Ms. A.
I hate being first. LaFleur, Stanton Lawrence, Owen Clanton, Tony McCardle, and Jason Van Meer.
Okay. Mr. Baumgartner.
There we go.
My 4, Tony McCardle, Owen Clanton, Stan Lawrence, and Max Calderera.
Mr. Brew is absent. Mr. Castillo.
Tony McCardle, Jason Van Meter, Owen Clanton, and Stanton Lawrence.
Ms. Fontaine.
Tony McCarthy, Jason Van Peters, Dr. Lawrence, and Owen Clanton.
Ms. Gay.
Lawrence, Harvey, Calderera, and, McConnell.
Mr. Hardesty.
Dr. Van Meter, Max Calderera, Owen Clanton, and Stan Lawrence.
Ms. McReynolds.
Tony McCardle, Max Calderero, also Stanton Lawrence, and Hannah Harvey.
Hannah Harden.
Hannah Harvey.
Mr. Natale.
Jason Van Meter, Max Calderera, Owen Clanton, Tony McCardle.
Meter, Owen Clanton, Max Calderera, Stanton Lawrence.
Mr. Tarver,
Clinton, Calderera, Van Meter, Lawrence.
Mr. Wallace,
Calderera, Harvey, Stanton, and Van Meter.
Dr. Washington,
Lawrence, Mercado, Harvey, and Gibson.
Gibson.
Yes.
Excuse me, all in agreement. Okay, our vote totals are as follows. Going descending order. Dr. Lawrence, 12. Tony McCarroll, 10.
Louder.
Sorry?
Can't hear you.
Okay. Clinton, 9, Hannah Harvey, 4, Jerry Gibson, 2, Vernon Ruffin, 0. So you have, 2 candidates with 9 votes apiece tied for 4th place.
Okay,
Next,
so
Colorado and Clinton.
with a tie for 4th place, the default thing we would do would be vote for one,
One on the other.
and the lowest would be eliminated, right?
I think that's what your procedure says.
Unless anybody has any suggestions they'd like to make instead of that, that's what we're gonna do. Okay, is it permissible to have a motion to change what we're fixing to do right now? If I permit it, is it legal is it permissible? What do you want to do?
There's nothing illegal about
Okay.
changing that.
All right, so what Aaron has suggested is that we somehow, in our 5-hour meeting, which I'm in favor of what you're doing, but that's gonna be a long meeting, interview 5. That's right. So what Aaron is suggesting is that we interview those 5.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Natale, second, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Harder, well, you got any comments?
I have a comment.
Hang on.
The reason for the motion is, basically, this was the purest vote, according to me. If you have, we had 2 with 10 and 2 with 9. And so, to me, you got 9, means you had the same amount, you make the cut out. I just think it's, we need to do our due diligence and review if they got the votes initially. But if y'all disagree, I'll certainly understand.
Hang on, Damon. Oh, you're right, you did make a second. Go ahead, Robert.
I don't see this as really interviewing 5, although we are, we're not really changing the rules. We're the 4 top vote getters, even though there's 2 ties. I think it's best that we interview all 5 of them. If we're here till 9:30, 10 o'clock, so what, that's our duty. Thank you.
Mr. Harder?
Okay, so my suggestion is that we put it, I don't know how we do this, but. I
It would
think
need to be on the
if
8th.
We would do it on the 8th.
It would need to be on the 8th, have 3, right?
Are we drawing for the order that they go in interviews?
The interviews of the candidates were alphabetical, right? We're gonna interview the candidates in alphabetical order, so that would just apply. The first 3 would be on the 8th. If Mr. Natale's motion passes, that would give us 5 interviews. We would take 3 on the 8th and 2 on the 9th.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Ms. Gay?
I have a question. You know, we discussed this at length when we came up with the recommendations, and I think it was Mr. Castile that said that we would interview 50% of the applicants. 50% of 8 people would be 4 interviews. I don't agree with adding 1 because we could just have a vote on one or the other and let it go with that.
Okay. The original wording did say at least 50%, just for reference.
Ms. Carlisle went back and listened to the audio, and it was a motion to interview at least 50%.
So there's some leeway. Mr. Natale's motion is still on the floor. Any more questions about Mr. Natale's motion? Essentially, the motion is to take the top 5, which clears any ties. Anybody have any questions? There was a tie for second, and a tie for 4th. Reverend Wallace, go ahead.
So a quick question, and I know this motion is on the floor, but what is the alternative tonight if we did not have that motion on the floor? What would be the other
It would
option?
be vote for 1 between the bottom 2. So the guys that are tied for 2nd, there's no vote there. The guys that are tied for 4th, it would be vote for 1, the lowest one's eliminated, and then we have 4. That would be what would happen if Mr. Natale's motion fails. Right? Correct. Anybody have any questions about Mr. Natale's motion? Okay, all in favor of Mr. Natale's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, we have a couple nays. Yeah, that's good. We'll roll call it. That was a couple nays. Go ahead, Mr. Bourne.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Bonner,
Yes.
Mr. Rhodes, Mr. Castile.
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Gay,
No.
Mr. Hardison,
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Natale,
Yes.
Mr. O'Banion,
Yes.
Mr. Keyshawn,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Okay, so the motion passes, so we're taking the 5 that were mentioned, 9 votes and up, basically. Read those off for the record, Mr. Bourne, please, just so we have it in the record.
Yes, sir. Dr. Stanton Lawrence, Tony McCardle, Dr. Jason Van Meter, Max Calderera, and Owen Clan.
Okay, so that's the list. You guys gonna handle notifying the finalists, obviously, of when they're need to be here? I'm gonna take one more bit of privilege. The meeting on the 8th, that is now gonna be 4.5 hours long. Is there any interest in starting that meeting earlier? No, it's fine, if nobody's interested. Otherwise, it's gonna start at 5 o'clock. Okay, that's fine, so start at 5 o'clock. Item number 3, special call board meeting, just making sure everybody's aware. July the 8th, July the 9th, July the 11th. Then we have C&I committee meetings on the 23rd and 24th. That's the end of all the business. A motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion right here, second Dr. Washington. All in favor say aye. All opposed nay.